Welcome to the Author Corner, our chance to meet the authors you'll want to read. I'm Stephanie, and I'm so excited today to be joined by author Janet Rudolph. Janet's the author of Desperately Seeking Persephone, a whole bunch of other books you're going to be so excited to learn about. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I love your titles. I mean, we have Desperately Seeking Persephone, which I keep saying Desperately Seeking Susan. Wasn't that like a movie or something years ago? But also, when Moses was a shaman and when Eve was a goddess. We have so much to talk about. My goodness. But let's just start with the order of these, just so I know. When Moses was the shaman, when Eve was a goddess. Who came first, Moses or Eve?
First I wrote when Eve was a goddess.
Well, I knew biblically she came first. Well, I'm glad we're starting with that. So that was your first one. When Eve was a goddess, a shamanic view of the Bible.
Correct.
Start me first with, what is a shaman?
That's a really good question. My favorite definition comes from Serge Kahili King, who is a Hawaiian shaman. And he writes, a shaman connects people with other people, people with themselves, people with nature, people with different aspects of life. It's also very pagan, and that can often be considered an insult. But actually, pagan just means people who pay attention to nature, who pay attention to the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the seasons, and connect their own lives to how these cycles work.
Oh, I love that definition, because I guess in my mind, pagan is almost like the opposite of so many other things, but it really isn't.
No, it's not.
Okay. Well, I like nature, so now I'm loving this.
Right.
You know,
right.
So being in touch with nature and the cycles that nature has.
Yes.
Is paganism or pagan,
right.
And a shaman is someone who is a connector who connects people to those
cycles.
Wow.
So that we can understand them both in ourselves and in the larger world.
Fantastic. I love that. So a shamanic view of the Bible. These are all different, starting with Eve.
Correct.
Looking at it through that lens.
Well, here's my elevator pitch for this book. The word Eve in Hebrew, Hawa or Hava, means life.
Right.
So she's in this Garden of Eden, and there's two trees. The tree of life and the tree of knowledge. She was forbidden to eat the tree of life, but that was her tree. It's her name. It was literally her tree. And in the Levant section of the world, which is where this came from, right. There were always goddesses and trees freely offering gifts to humanity of food and nurturing. And this tale was turned around. It was reversed, so it became a curse. But what if our foundational belief of our society was that this was a gift to humanity, to be given this fruit, not some horrible something that happened that was all Eve's fault, no less.
I love that view. I love that view of a gift. That makes it so much nicer. Why didn't we pick that one?
We could talk about that one too, but that would be a whole other story.
That's a whole other episode, isn't it?
Yes.
But wow, you kind of think about something like that. I mean, that's such a pivotal story that has set the tone for human civilization for thousands of years.
Yes.
And how different would this world be if that was viewed as a gift instead of a curse?
Correct.
I can't even wrap my head around how that could possibly change everything.
And it's important because we need paradigms that nurture us and make us more loving or help us to be more loving and more connected.
Right.
Especially in this world that we live in today.
Bring me back then before this book.
Okay.
Did you have a shaman? Like, how did you get connected? Because for you to be able to write as you do and think as you do, what brought you there?
Yes, I was really called to the shamanic path, and I found a shamanic path when I got really sick. This was 1996, and I started getting really sick, and the doctors just kept giving me new medication, which just kept making me more sick, and this went on for about 6 months, I would say, until a friend took me up to Maine, where a shamanic couple, a husband and wife team, were teaching. So they took me up for this weekend, and they did a healing on me. And I healed. And I literally signed on the dotted line. I was like, I'm going to be your apprentice. And I stayed with them for 17 years.
That's just amazing. How did you find these people?
It was through a friend who knew them, yes.
And, you know, we have to stay open to connections.
We were talking about synchronicity earlier.
Absolutely.
And it was just this beautiful synchronicity.
Wow. Thank goodness for that. So
yes.
You're healed.
Yes, they healed me, but you will get sick again if you do not do the work on your own, if you do not do your own work to heal the wounds of your life, basically.
Right. No, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. But thank goodness you found the right path.
I would consider it the right path.
And your wounds at that point were manifesting in physical ways.
Yes, I was just getting sick. I had trouble breathing. I had terrible bronchitis again and again and again, and I literally had trouble breathing. And the breath of life is the basis of life, the foundation of life.
Right. Now, your next book then, When Moses Was a Shaman. So we're sticking with these biblical themes aligned with shamanism.
Correct.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about why you chose to align the Bible. Like, did that come from your own background?
Well, I am Jewish by ancestry.
Okay.
But I also feel that we need to look at the paradigms of our society and our culture if we're going to make any changes.
Right.
And we need to not only understand them, but understand where they came from and understand other possibilities of what can be.
Oh, I like that. And I also like the fact that we as readers and we as people are familiar with people like Eve and Moses. So you're starting from a place of at least familiarity to the general story, even if you're going to turn it on its head. You know.
I like that. I do turn it on its head.
But rather than just talking about, you know, Bob or something like that, you know, since you are beginning with something that most of the world is familiar with in one way, shape, or form, that's good and that's bad. Have you noticed that? Because if people are coming with a preconceived notion, it's kind of, you're giving yourself a little bit of a handicap, let's say, by writing or speaking about that, but you're also giving them a sense of connection to something they've heard of.
Well, I didn't just pick it randomly.
I didn't think so.
These were really old knowledge, the old knowledge of the pagan people of their time, and these were all oral teachings. So these biblical stories, they've stood the test of time.
Right.
And I've seen that good spiritual stories can be read on many different levels. They're exciting adventures, but they also have different teachings.
Yes.
And the teachings are what we've come to appreciate or come to understand. Right. And what those teachings are, if we can understand them differently, if we can understand them as the people of the time did, we can have a whole different understanding of what all these things mean.
Yeah, that's just amazing. You said you were Jewish by heritage.
Yes, I am.
So you had studied all of these stories through the lens of Judaism.
Yes.
And now kind of revisiting them over the course of your life through the lens of shamanism.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I did.
That's amazing to do, and that you're open to doing that. And exciting for other people. Right. To go kind of on that journey.
And I always knew there were hidden lessons. Every time I read it, when I was younger, I knew there were hidden lessons, but I didn't have the tools to find them until I did my own shamanic training. And now, suddenly it was so clear.
Your own training, is that training to make you a shaman, or is it
Yes.
Yes. So now you lead other people.
Yes, I do.
Wow, that's exciting. That's exciting. So how long have you been doing that?
Leading other people or doing the training?
I guess both.
So doing the training has been over 25 years now. It's been a long time. I'm going to say it's been about 5 years that I've really been teaching.
That's exciting. And when people come to you, are they saddled with old views and realizing that they want something different and a different lens on their life? Or
that would be an interesting way to put it, I'd say. So people that want healing. People want to feel more whole. Right. I think that we live in a very fractured world, and I think people are feeling that fracture and are looking for something.
Right. Right. You are so right that this world is fractured. And if more people would think about connections and healing. And, well, then we seem to have jumped from the Bible to Desperately Seeking Persephone.
Right.
So we went from the Bible to Greek.
Right.
Tell me
but it's all the same.
it's all in there. It's all the same thing. What made you interested in that? Or how did your journey lead you there might be a better question.
I started writing up my own stories, and I did it for myself to help for my own personal healing and to help understand certain things that were happening in my life.
Right.
And what I came to realize is some of this is so universal that I am not alone in this process.
Yes.
And the subtitle is A Shamanic Journey Through the Underworld.
Yes.
And I think the underworld is a place that's just part of the human experience. You know, you have it mythically, you have Alice going down a rabbit hole, you have Dorothy being sent off into a tornado, we have COVID that comes up. So
there's an underworld for you.
Yeah, there's so many different ways to experience it, both mythically and in our lives. You know, when things happen that are not what we expect, very often we just have to retool and say, and we get dropped down into the sense of, uh-oh, what am I doing with my life? What does this mean? That's what a midlife crisis is, the same thing, that we have a sense that it doesn't have meaning, and we need to search out what we can do to give back meaning in our life.
Right. Oh gosh, am I so glad you said the words midlife crisis. Just because you're bringing to show an experience that everybody has, and here, you know, midlife crisis makes people feel helpless, and they have to just you know, run out and buy a Rolex or have an affair or something, or go on a different path.
Right, or we can go on an adventure to discover ourselves anew.
Yes.
And that's what the shamanic pathway is.
An adventure to discover something new about ourselves.
Yes.
Wow. I'm just fascinated about you recognizing that you needed this, because so many people don't. And that's why I was thrilled with the midlife crisis, because somebody out there just heard midlife crisis. Oh, that could be a turning point in my life.
Yes.
That could be a time that I choose something different.
Yes. Or a time when I go back and look at my life and what are the gifts that maybe I haven't recognized. Because we all have gifts that happen in our lives all the time.
And we don't always recognize them.
Yes.
Now, I know Desperately Seeking Persephone also deals with a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And you have had trauma, but like you said, trauma is universal as well.
Right.
And so many people, I mean, there's a lot of hurt people. You were talking about society being fractured, but there's a lot of very, very hurt people.
Yeah. Well, when society's fractured, we get fractured individually.
Well, that's true. That makes a very good point. And vice versa. When you have people who are hurt individually, then collectively, we're going to have a fractured society.
Yes.
So the shamanic journey is healing those individuals, which will then heal the society.
Exactly. Exactly.
So if you're...
And I do hope that this is a book about healing.
Yes.
I had to describe what I was healing from.
Of course.
So I that's why I did it mythically, to make it more universal. Because there was a lot of violence in my early years, and I was quite fractured from it. So I needed to find pathways and routes out of the underworld.
Yeah. Well, I like the way that you phrased that, though. You did it mythically so that other people could be part of the journey, and it's not just a report about your own journey.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, yes, you had violence, as you said, and other things, but so many others have also.
Yes. And
by reporting it in a way that people can read themselves in the pages.
And there's a reason, again, the same reason as of Eve and Moses, that the story has withstood the test of time, because it speaks to our human condition so beautifully and so deeply, and on so many layers. Because the story of Persephone, her mother is Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and Persephone is kidnapped, you could read raped, by Hades and taken down to the underworld, and transforms herself to become queen of the underworld. And this story is often told as a seasonal story, that when Persephone's in Hades, Demeter won't allow any crops to grow when it's wintertime. And when Persephone's allowed to come back up to the surface, then it's spring and crops will grow again. So again, this is a story on many different layers.
Right.
So it has the seasonal story, but it's so much deeper of a story of the human condition.
Just for our viewers, because now would you remind us of why Persephone stays in Hades for half the year and comes back for half the year? Because you were doing some of that story, but just
right. Demeter, her mother, could not find her, and she finally goes to Zeus, which is, by the way, Persephone's father, and says, "I'm not going to. The crops won't grow. People will die. You have to help me find her." So, since Zeus had helped arrange her kidnapping, he knew where she was and arranged for her to come back, but she had eaten pomegranate seeds. And because she had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds, so the story goes, she had to spend 6 months in the underworld, and 6 months, she could spend 6 months with her mother.
Okay, so the takeaway is don't eat pomegranate seeds?
On the contrary, I would say please eat those pomegranate seeds.
Oh, were the 6 ones that she ate meant 6 months down there or 6 months up here?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to it.
So that's why I was wondering if
the key is seeds.
Ah.
Because think about where seeds grow on the earth. They need to grow in the dark and the earth. They need to grow deep into the earth. The roots have to go into the earth so that the shoots of the plants can grow up into the light.
Oh my gosh, spoken like a shaman. I love that visualization right there. Let's just all think about how seeds, the beginnings of everything, have to grow in the darkness.
Yes.
You know, so anyone who is currently in the darkness, that's because you're growing.
Yes.
Something is happening. If you allow it, something is happening in that darkness.
That's where the seeds are nurtured.
Right. And if we don't experience that darkness, subsequently one could say we can't grow.
Right. Right. In fact, one of the quotes I have in my book, and I might boggle it because I don't remember exactly, but Nietzsche says, the tree that would grow to heaven must sense its roots to hell.
Wow. That's an image right there for us all.
Right.
You know, and that's a great, almost like a yin and yang thing. You know, it's about balance. And it's about kind of looking when you're going through dark times that there's going to be light, and vice versa, that there are things at play and you can't have one without the other.
Yes.
You mentioned Zeus arranged the kidnapping?
Yes, he helped Hades.
How come I didn't know that?
And he had actually raped Demeter, which is how Persephone came to be. So it's a very complicated family story.
But they are a very complicated family, aren't they? You know, I watched the Disney movie, and they gloss over all of that stuff.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sure they don't mention. I mean, it's a Disney movie.
Right.
The word rape does not appear in a Disney movie. But really, so he arranged that whole thing.
Yes, he did.
That wasn't very nice of him.
No.
We could have a whole discussion about father figures doing bad things too, but that's a whole other episode on its own, I suppose. But again, a universal story that people who have had trauma in their lives due to a parental figure.
Right. Which was my situation.
Yes.
Because my father had abused me. So I connected very deeply with the story.
Yes, which is why you and Persephone.
Right. Yeah, and in the book I have pajama parties, and I also include Inanna, who's a Sumerian goddess who she chooses to go to the underworld, But she also takes a trip to the underworld, so we compare notes.
Ah, I get that. I like that you have befriended. They're on the journey with you.
Yes.
That's really cool because you have a lot in common.
Yes.
You know, you have lousy dads.
And we all need help.
And you all need help.
Right.
No, that's fabulous. You know, because I wanted to know, like, what do we do? You know, we've talked about how a lot of people, all of us, quite frankly, but are on that side of the coin and kind of want to come on this side of the coin, and you have made that journey, and it's an endless journey.
It's a lifetime journey.
It is. It's
and
a
I
lifetime.
described 2 shamanic initiations in the book, and my hope is that it's seen as an adventure, as an adventure story. I think in the Blur we write that it's when Indiana Jones meets Carl Jung, because it is an adventure. And if you don't go too much into fear and you look at the adventure of all the possibilities, it can be a wonderful journey.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's so inspiring for people to hear, people who are stuck. Mm-hmm. That not only is there sunlight, but there's a whole adventure.
Yes.
You know, there's a whole adventure, and there's a whole lot of people who have trod this road before you, including Persephone.
Yes. Thank you, Persephone.
Thank you, Persephone. You know, and sometimes, I mean, I would love for anyone who's feeling that way to find a mentor, a shaman, a connector, but sometimes we have to rely on Persephone.
Yes.
You know, sometimes that person has not come into your life yet.
Right.
You know, but Persephone is always there.
And sometimes we need both.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So what goes on next? You mentioned 2 shamanic initiations.
Yes.
So you're like super shaman now? I mean, like.
Whoa, super shaman. That was nice.
Is that a thing, super shaman? Do you get like a badge? Do you wear a cape? I'm just.
There's a story of a Buddhist who opens up a box and there's nothing in it. It's just what I always wanted, nothing. So no, I do not get a badge.
You don't get a badge and a cape.
Right. But I think it gives me a lot of tools. It gives me this broad range of tools, both to use in my own life and then when I'm working with other people.
Right,
it's just this broad range of tools that are cross-cultural and cross-time periods. So that if somebody needs a guide for the pathway, because different pathways resonate differently with different people. So some people might not resonate with Persephone. Maybe they need Eve.
Right.
Or just a different pathway, and there's so much available. So I think these different initiations gives me that broad view of the many different ways we can approach this journey.
I'm so glad you said that, because I love that image that it's not a straight line. There's lots of different ways to get there. I always think, you know, if we're all trying to get to the top of a mountain, you can go up this side, you can go up the left side, the right side. You might crawl on your hands and knees. You might take a helicopter to the top.
Exactly.
But we're all going to get there in different ways. So some people, Persephone, it might resonate. Mm-hmm. And others say, I'm not feeling it.
Exactly. So that's why having these different pathways is so important.
So your 2 shamanic initiations were in 2 different, I don't know if the right word is fields?
Traditions.
Thank you.
2 very different traditions.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Are there other traditions that have other shamanic journeys?
There's as many as there are cultures in the world.
So this is infinite. You come on the show again in a year, who knows?
Right. Right. You know, it's the people of the land, and think of it as a well of knowledge, and it grew up differently in different lands, and partially because of the lands were different. Like the ceremonies or rituals in a desert land would be different than rituals in a forest land. So some of it was by necessity, and some of it was by tradition of the cultures.
Now, your 2 shamanic journeys, were they aligned with particular lands or cultures?
Well, one of them was, I'm an Alakai, which is a Hawaiian spiritual guide from Aloha International, which is on the Big Island in Hawaii there. And although I've only been studying it with Serge, he's the founder of that system, for maybe 5-6 years, I've known about it for 30 years.
Okay.
So.
And that's one of your shamanic initiations.
Yes.
And the other?
The other one is called Divine Humanity.
Okay.
And these are the teachers that healed me in 1996 when I first got sick. And Divine Humanity means, so we're all human because we all have these human bodies which we need to walk on the earth, but we're all divine because we all have a spirit. And where does that spirit come from? So we all have this connection to the heavens. And we are literally the rainbow bridge between the two. Our bodies are quite substantially this bridge between heaven and earth.
Right. I could hear from what you're saying already how different those two are, and how one, somebody might say, whatever. Oh, yes, that's why there's so many, I guess.
Yes.
Because different people will resonate.
And the same person will resonate differently at different times.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. I'm really glad you said that. So something that might be working for you when you're in your 20s, let's say, is not the same thing working for you when you're in your 50s.
Correct, yes.
Interesting. Or that midlife crisis we talked about earlier. You might have to change your journey at some point. So helpful, because even on this journey, which might be different, but might be running side by side with things people have known since childhood, the journey is not always a straight line, is it?
Oh, I would say it's never a straight line.
I like that. Not even for 5 minutes, huh? Even. It's just a seasick kind of a thing going on. You don't even get 10 minutes of, oh, look at me. I'm doing the same thing as I did yesterday.
Life's an adventure.
I love that. Well, that's what all these books are about. Life is an adventure, and I almost picture the hamster wheel, except the hamster wheel is always going straight, and honestly,
think of a labyrinth.
A labyrinth, yes. A labyrinth is much better than a hamster wheel, but it's going somewhere.
That's a really interesting question. Is it the journey, or is it arriving somewhere?
Oh my gosh, we've given rise to like 4 more episodes here, haven't we? That's just amazing. Is it the journey, or is it arriving somewhere? Well, it seems like, while we might not be able to answer that question, enjoy the journey.
Yes.
Definitely enjoy the journey. Well, I've enjoyed the journey with you. I certainly want our viewers, when Eve was a goddess, when Moses was a shaman, or for the Greek lovers, desperately seeking Persephone, and definitely enjoy the journey, as I've enjoyed this journey with author Janet Rudolph. Thanks so much for joining me.
We're just books up on a shelf. Try to understand this if you